when I finally arrived at my own cabin after months of paperwork. A furious HOA president was already waiting with her phone out, calling 911 to report me as a trespasser. But when the cops showed up, they walked right up and shook my hand. The sun had just begun to dip below the mountain ridge when my truck rumbled up the gravel road. Dust curled up behind me like smoke, and the towering pine trees whispered in the wind. After months of waiting, legal checks, paperwork, and a hefty wire transfer, this was it, the first day at my cabin. My cabin tucked deep in the hills, beside a turquoise lake, away from the buzz and noise of the world. It was supposed to be peaceful. It was supposed to be mine. But things turned the other way real fast. As I rounded the final bend, the rustic wood cabin came into view. Just as beautiful as the photos, maybe even more. A wide porch, freshly stained timber walls, and the lake glinting behind it like a mirror reflecting heaven. My heart beat faster. I killed the engine, stepped out of the truck, and took a long breath of mountain air. Then, before I could even grab my keys, I heard her heels clicking on gravel, fast. Turning around, I saw her, a woman maybe in her 50s, with sharp eyes, short blonde hair, and a pink sun hat that looked more suited for a yacht club than the wilderness. She was power walking straight toward me, holding something that looked like a clipboard. "You can't be here," she barked, without so much as a hello. "Excuse me," I asked, still by the driver's side door. "This is my cabin." She narrowed her eyes and jabbed the clipboard toward me. "That cabin belongs to the Green Pines HOA. You're trespassing." I blinked. "No, I think you're mistaken. I bought this property directly from the county auction. It's not part of any HOA, it's a private parcel. I've got the deed." She didn't even look at it when I pulled it out. Instead, she lifted her phone and dialed 3 numbers with the confidence of someone who thought they were law itself. "I'm reporting a trespasser," she said into the phone. "Yes, a man claiming to own property that isn't his. He refuses to leave." My stomach dropped. I'd just arrived. I hadn't even set foot inside the cabin, and already the police were being called on me. I stepped back, held up my hands to show I wasn't a threat, and looked around to see if this was a prank, but no one laughed. A few other neighbors peeked from behind trees and porches. One man was holding a garden hose midstream, just watching. The woman glared at me with the triumph of someone who thought she'd won. "You have 5 minutes," she said coldly. "The sheriff's on the way." I stood still, leaning against the front of my truck, the deed in one hand and my ID in the other. My heart pounded. I'd never been in trouble with the law. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a retreat. Now I was waiting to explain my innocence in the middle of a gravel road, while a stranger labeled me a criminal. 15 minutes passed before the first police SUV arrived. Dust swirled again. The HOA woman stood straighter, like this was her moment. But what happened next turned her whole plan upside down. The deputy stepped out and walked up to me first. "Mr. Hanley." "Yes," I said, surprised he knew my name. He smiled, offering a hand. "Welcome. We helped process your land records through the county survey office. This place is yours, fair and square." I stared for a second before shaking his hand. "Wait, seriously?" "Yep," he nodded, turning to glance at the HOA woman, who looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "This property is outside the HOA boundaries. It used to be federal land before the county released it at auction. You're not only allowed to be here, you own it." The woman's mouth dropped open. "There must be some mistake," she sputtered. "He can't just live here. It's not allowed. We've never had anyone on this side of the ridge." The officer gave her a tight smile. "Well, ma'am, now you do." It was the first time I smiled since arriving. Relief poured into my chest like warm sunlight. The sheriff didn't just believe me, he knew the truth. And the best part, he said it in front of the whole neighborhood. But just as I began unloading the truck, the woman wasn't finished. "You may have tricked the system," she called from the road, "but don't think this is over." I didn't respond. I just waved and walked toward the porch. A few neighbors still watched from a distance. A younger couple gave me a hesitant nod. One guy with a fishing pole smiled wide and gave me a thumbs up. That night, I didn't unpack everything, just the essentials, some food, a blanket, a folding chair. I sat on the porch as the sky faded into deep blues and purples. The lake was glass, frogs croaked in the reeds, stars blinked awake. I thought about everything that had happened in just one day. My dream cabin almost turned into a nightmare, but I stood my ground. And the law had backed me up still. Something told me this was just the beginning. That woman, whoever she was, didn't seem like the type to give up. And I'd just stepped into her world. The morning after my chaotic arrival, I stepped out onto the porch with a coffee mug in hand. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles and distant smoke from someone's fireplace. Birds chirped overhead, and the lake reflected the soft morning light like a giant piece of glass. For a brief moment, everything felt right. Then I saw it. A fresh sign had been nailed to a wooden post at the edge of my driveway. Bold red letters screamed, "No trespassing, private HOA property violators will be fined." I walked over, coffee still in hand, and stared at it in disbelief. The post was new. The dirt around it was freshly dug. Someone had come by early, probably before sunrise, and planted this thing on my land. I didn't even have to guess who did it. Sure enough, across the road stood the same woman from yesterday. Same sun hat, same tight blazer, arms crossed like a school principal, waiting for a confession. Next to her stood a tall, thin man with a clipboard and glasses, who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. He waved awkwardly. "Good morning," the man said, far too cheerfully. "I'm Gregory, HOA enforcement officer for Green Pines. We're here to welcome you and walk through a few community expectations." I squinted. "Pretty sure your sign. It says I'm not welcome." The woman took over. "Mr. Hanley, I don't know what kind of trickery you used to buy this land, but let me be clear. We will not allow you to disrupt the harmony of this community." I took a deep breath. "Look, I bought this land legally." The sheriff confirmed it. "I have no intention of disrupting anything. I just want to live peacefully in my own cabin." Gregory stepped forward with his clipboard. "We understand that. However, we have a few community rules that apply to everyone living in the area. For example, cabin paint colors must match our approved palette. No loud tools after 6 p.m. And of course," he flipped a page, "no storing utility vehicles in front of the home." I glanced over at my old pickup, dusty and parked in the drive. "You're joking," he smiled again. "We like to keep things looking uniform." "Yeah, well," I said, folding my arms, "you can't enforce rules on land that's not under your authority. My property isn't part of your HOA. The woman's expression twisted into something between a glare and a smirk. "That's what your paperwork says. But we have long-standing boundaries in this neighborhood, and we intend to maintain them." With that, they both turned and walked away. No goodbye, no welcome basket. Just a threat with a smile. That afternoon things escalated. I started hauling lumber from the truck bed to the side of the cabin. I'd planned on building a small woodshed out back, something to store tools and firewood before winter came in. As I hammered the first few nails, I heard the unmistakable click of a phone camera. Turning around, I spotted a different neighbor. Middle-aged, gray hoodie, sunglasses even though the sun was behind the clouds. He wasn't even trying to hide it. "You need something?" I called out. "Nope, just documenting," he replied, then walked away. 2 hours later, a notice was pinned to my front door. "Unauthorized structure, cease construction immediately, violates HOA design standards." It wasn't even an official county notice, just a piece of paper with a logo on it. But the nerve they had marching onto my land, taping garbage to my door like they owned the place. The next morning brought more surprises. Someone had placed 3 bright orange cones across my driveway, blocking it entirely, and my mailbox, a sturdy black iron one I'd installed myself, had been knocked over and lay bent in half on the ground. It was war. I filed a report with the sheriff, but they could only do so much. "They're not allowed to post notices or damage your property," the deputy told me, "but unless you catch them in the act, it's hard to press charges. These people know how to walk the line." I nodded, frustrated. "What am I supposed to do?" "Document everything," he advised. "Every notice, every cone, every time they step foot on your land. They want you to get angry. Don't give them what they want." So I did. I installed trail cams, discreet, motion sensitive, around the perimeter of my cabin. I kept a journal with dates, times, even photos of everything they touched or posted. I wasn't going anywhere, and if they were going to harass me, I was going to make sure there was a record. One night I heard rustling outside. I crept out quietly with a flashlight. By the road, just beyond the reach of my porch light, stood 2 figures, one of them, unmistakably the HOA woman, holding something in her hand. The beam of my flashlight caught her eyes. She froze. "Evening," I said calmly. She didn't respond, just dropped what she was holding, another fake violation notice, and walked off into the dark like a shadow. The other person scurried after her. I picked up the paper. Same logo, same threats. This time, it accused me of excessive nighttime lighting. I laughed out loud. They were getting desperate. Still, it wore on me. The constant watching, the little sabotages, the smug way she pretended to represent some kind of authority. But I had something they didn't: the law and the truth. And deep down I knew people like her couldn't stand being out of control. They'd push and prod, but the more they did, the worse it would be for them when the truth finally came to light. I looked out at the lake, calm and quiet under the stars. This land had been abandoned for years, forgotten by the county, dismissed by the HOA, but now someone was finally calling it home, and that scared them. But it didn't scare me. Not anymore. The 3rd week started off peaceful. Too peaceful, in fact. The kind of calm you feel just before a storm. I had spent the morning restacking firewood and cleaning out the cabin's chimney. The air smelled like rain, even though the sky remained dry, but something told me Downey was about to face another round of chaos. Sure enough, it came faster than expected. Around 3 p.m., just as I was stepping back inside with a tool belt slung over my shoulder, I heard tires crunching on gravel. Then came a loud knock on the door. Not a neighborly tap. It was the kind of pounding that makes your stomach twist. I opened the door. 2 uniformed sheriff deputies stood on my porch, hands near their belts, not unfriendly but clearly on edge. Behind them sat a police SUV, Lights off, engine still humming. "You, Mr. Hanley?" one of them asked. "I am," I replied, wiping my hands on my jeans. "What's this about?" "We got a 911 call reporting a trespasser trying to forcibly occupy a cabin on HOA land." I blinked. "You're kidding me. Mind if we take a look at your ID and your deed?" I didn't argue. I stepped back inside, grabbed the folder where I kept all my documents, and handed them both over. The senior deputy opened it, flipped through the pages, then looked up at me. "This is legit," he muttered to his partner. "Title's clean. No liens, not under HOA jurisdiction." "I've been trying to tell them that for 3 weeks now," I said, motioning to the edge of the woods. "They've been harassing me since I moved in." Just then the storm showed up. Not the weather, the real storm. That woman, blazer perfectly pressed, clipboard clutched to her chest, eyes blazing with confidence. She marched up to my driveway with 2 other HOA members, trailing behind her like a personal security team. "There he is," she shouted. "That's him. I told you, he's squatting. He doesn't belong here." The deputies turned toward her. "Ma'am," one of them said sternly, "Mr. Hanley has provided valid proof of ownership. This cabin, and the bridge access, is legally his." Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her face twitched. For a second, she looked like someone had unplugged her brain. "There must be a mistake," she insisted. "Our community guidelines don't allow independent cabins to operate outside the HOA. We've already voted on this." The younger deputy raised a brow. "Ma'am, HOA votes don't override legal property deeds. This land was never part of your association. You have no authority here." It was a moment I'll never forget. The shift in energy was immediate. She went from aggressive to stunned, from loud to breathless. Her shoulders drooped slightly. Her face reddened out of embarrassment, but out of sheer frustration. It was the first time someone had told her no in a way that actually mattered. "You mean he can just live here?" she asked, nearly trembling. "And do whatever he wants?" "Within the law, yes," the senior deputy confirmed. "And if I may suggest, ma'am, filing false police reports is a serious offense." One of the HOA men whispered something to her. She ignored him and pointed a shaky finger at me. "He's going to ruin the look of this community. He's going to bring in the wrong crowd. We've worked too hard for this neighborhood to invade it like this." "Invasion," I said, stepping off the porch. "Lady, I bought a piece of land in a rundown cabin that no one wanted for 10 years. I've cleaned it, fixed it, respected the wildlife, and kept to myself. You're the one trespassing, not me." Her eyes darted between me and the deputies, as if searching for a lifeline. But there was none. The deputies began to walk back, toward their vehicle. "You folks are free to go," one of them said. "And Mr. Hanley, if this happens again, call us immediately. You're well within your rights to file a harassment complaint." "I just might," I said, locking eyes with her one last time. They left. The woman stood there for a long moment, stunned, then turned and stormed off with her followers scurrying behind her. It should have felt like a win. In some ways, it did. The law had spoken, and this time, I wasn't the one being questioned or threatened, but I knew better than to think this was over. For people like her, defeat doesn't mean surrender. It means plotting the next move. That night, I sat on the porch with a cold drink, watching the sun slip behind the trees. The lake shimmered in the distance, undisturbed, peaceful, but not permanent. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the security footage from the trail cams. There she was just the day before, pacing near the bridge, pointing at it while talking to someone I didn't recognize. They'd been trying to find some loophole, some way to reclaim what they believed was theirs, only it never had been. I thought back to what one of the deputies said. HOA votes don't override legal property deeds. It stuck with me because it proved something important. Truth matters more than popularity, more than fear, more than a vote among neighbors who think their opinion is law. This wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about standing up to a system of fake authority. It was about claiming your space in a world where bullies wear blazers instead of brass knuckles. They had called 911 hoping I'd be dragged away. Instead, I was validated, recognized, left in peace. For now, but I had a feeling it wouldn't be the last time they'd try something, so I stayed ready. Because the next battle I knew wouldn't be over land. It would be over control. The calm after the 911 confrontation was deceptive, like the eerie silence between thunderclaps. For a few days, everything went quiet. No HOA foot soldiers knocking at my door. No strange cars creeping past my driveway. Not even the woman in the cream blazer, Karen, as the neighborhood quietly called her, showed her face. I used the time to focus on the land. The cabin had been neglected for years, and restoring it was a slow but satisfying process. I rebuilt part of the fence, repaired the dock on the lake, and installed a small solar power setup. Every nail I hammered and felt like I was reclaiming more than just a house. It was my peace, my right, my corner of the world that no one could take from me. Or so I thought. On a crisp Saturday morning, I headed down to the bridge, the only bridge connecting my cabin to the main road. It had always been public access until the county sold it along with the land, which I had rightfully purchased. My deed showed clear ownership of that bridge. It was mine, just like everything else on this property. But as I reached the clearing, I stopped cold. A metal gate had been installed, bolted directly into the ground right at the entrance to the bridge. A giant red and white "Do Not Enter Private Property" sign was attached to it. My gate, my bridge, my land blocked. And there, at the edge of the trees, stood 2 HOA board members watching me, smug looks pasted across their faces. Karen wasn't there, but her fingerprints were all over this move. "You're trespassing," one of them called out. "This road belongs to the HOA now." I stared at them, confused. "What are you talking about? This bridge is part of my DDA, own it. You can't just block me from my own property." He smirked. "It's not that simple anymore. The HOA recently held a vote. We declared the bridge a critical community asset, and under the new easement request, it now falls under joint access. You'll be getting a letter soon." "You're joking." "We even notified the sheriff's office," the other added. "You can't take that gate down without facing charges." Rage bubbled up in my chest. "That bridge is mine. You don't get to vote your way onto my property. We'll let the county sort it out," the smug ones said before they turned and walked away like they'd just dropped a winning hand in a poker game. I stood there, fists clenched. It didn't make sense. Even if they passed some internal HOA rule, it had no legal power over a property they didn't own. But it was a power play, pure intimidation. They were trying to force me into giving up, wear me down until I left. I drove straight into town, met with the county records clerk, and confirmed what I already knew. The bridge was mine, not public, not communal. It was clearly outlined in the plot description under my legal title, and no HOA vote could change that. I made copies of everything and drove back home, only to find the HOA had doubled down. They'd parked a private security car near the gate. A young guy in sunglasses and a polo shirt was sitting in the front seat, pretending he was a federal agent. "You can't go through," he said as I approached. "HOA orders." I pulled out my documents. "See, this bridge is mine. You're on my property. Move the car before I call the real police." He hesitated, then radioed someone. After a few seconds he turned the car around and left. I stood on the bridge and looked out over the lake. The wind rippled through the trees. My cabin sat across the water like a quiet witness to all of this madness. This wasn't just harassment anymore, it was sabotage. They were trying to create legal confusion, to blur the lines so much that even the authorities wouldn't know who to believe. That night, I emailed everything to my lawyer. Every photo, every document, every incident report from the sheriff's visits. I wanted to be ready, because I could feel what was coming. Karen and her crew weren't just making noise anymore. They were preparing to go full force, possibly even to court. The next morning I installed cameras facing the bridge. I wanted eyes on every angle in case they tried to tamper with it or stage something. If they were going to fight dirty, I needed proof. Sure enough, within 24 hours, the footage caught Karen, her self-cream blazer and all, walking up to the gate with bolt cutters in one hand and a manila folder in the other. She didn't cut the lock, but she paced back and forth for nearly 15 minutes, pointing, talking loudly on the phone, and waving the folder like she was directing a military operation. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about me personally. It was about power. The HOA had gotten used to controlling everything: how lawns looked, what colors houses were painted, even what kind of mailboxes people installed. My presence, my independence, my refusal to bend to their rules was a threat to their illusion of control. By owning the bridge, I didn't just own land, I owned their access, their weak spot, and that terrified them. I uploaded the footage to a cloud drive and filed an official complaint with the sheriff. Then I posted a photo of the locked gate, along with the caption, "HOA sealed my gate. I hold title to the only bridge out. Justice is coming." Within hours, it was shared across local Facebook groups, Reddit, even a few HOA horror story forums. Messages started pouring in. Some offered legal advice. Others shared similar stories, people across the country standing up against HOAs that overstepped their power. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the first, but I was ready to be the one who didn't fold. This was no longer just my fight. It was a message. You can build your fences. You can post your signs. You can call the cops and wave your fake rules. But if you try to take what doesn't belong to you, expect a battle you can't win. The morning air was quiet, but beneath the calm was tension, a tension I could feel in my bones. After weeks of harassment, false claims, blocked access, and HOA games, I was done playing defense. Today, I would end it, not with fists or fire, but with facts, law, and unwavering truth. I dressed simply: flannel shirt, jeans, and work boots, not because I wanted to make a statement, but because I needed to be myself, the man they tried to erase from his own land, the man they underestimated. I walked down to the bridge holding the property deed in one hand and a copy of the county map in the other. My lawyer had already filed a cease and desist against the HOA's interference, and the sheriff's office had promised a visit to monitor the situation. But this time I was doing something more public, more final. When I arrived, Karen was already there, cream blazer, clipboard, sunglasses, and flanked by 2 HOA board members and a cameraman from the local news. She wasn't backing down. "I figured you'd show up," she said, smirking. just in time to witness the bridge being declared community access. No, I replied calmly, stepping forward. You're in time to watch yourselves get exposed. She blinked. Excuse me. I turned to the small group of reporters and curious neighbors who had gathered, drawn by the social media buzz and local chatter. Many were holding their phones, recording every word. Everyone, I began, holding up the deed. This bridge, the entire stretch of road was sold to me with this property. This isn't up for interpretation. I own it. The HOA has no jurisdiction here, no legal authority, and yet they've installed illegal barriers, hired private security to block me, and tried to twist the law to force me out. I stepped a nearby signpost, where I had posted a laminated copy of the county-approved parcel map. I pointed to the bridge, clearly outlined as part of my private land. The county confirmed this, the sheriff confirmed it, my lawyer confirmed it, and I have all the documents available for public record, where truth doesn't care about Karen's clipboard. There were murmurs in the crowd. Some nodded. A few started clapping. Karen's smile, with cracked for the first time. This man is trying to deny the community access. He's selfish and refusing to cooperate with the she shouted, waving her clipboard in the air. He's dangerous, but her words landed differently now. People had seen the videos. They'd seen her pacing in front of the gate with bolt cutters. They'd seen the red and white barricades go up on my land. The narrative had shifted. One of the news reporters, a young woman in a red jacket, stepped forward with a microphone. Sir, are you saying the HOA built this gate illegally? I nodded. Absolutely. I have the footage. I have the permits. And I've just filed a formal complaint to have it removed. The sheriff's office will be here shortly to enforce the order. The crowd turned. Sure enough, a sheriff's SUV was rolling down the dirt road, headlights on, tires crunching over gravel. Behind it came another calm-eyed lawyer who stepped, while holding a rolled-up scroll of documents. Karen looked around, visibly panicked now. Her face reddened. You can't do this. This is harassment. The sheriff, a middle-aged man with a calm but firm tone, walked right up to her. Ma'am, we've reviewed the documentation. This man owns the land, the bridge, and access to this road. Your gate and signage are unlawful. We're asking you to remove them immediately. If not, we'll remove them for you and file charges. She froze. No more smug replies. No more clever deflections. Just silence. The officer turned to me. You good if we clear it? I nodded once. Go ahead. It was surreal, watching the same officers who were once called on me now unbolt the gate, pull down the signs, and clear the way I had been blocked from for weeks. Each clang of metal hitting the truck bed sounded like justice ringing out. Karen backed away, shielding her face from the cameras. My lawyer stepped beside me. They don't have a case. The public record is airtight. And after this stunt, if you want to sue for damages, I wouldn't blame you, but I shook my head. No lawsuits. I just want to live in peace. By noon, the barricade was gone. The reporters left with their stories. Neighbors stopped by to shake my hand. Some apologized for staying silent. Others thanked me for standing up, not just for myself, but for anyone who'd ever been pushed around by people with fake authority. Later, that evening, I stood alone on the bridge, looking across the water to my cabin. The lake shimmered in the golden light. The mountains loomed in calm silence. I walked slowly across the bridge, feeling every step like a final chapter closing. It wasn't just about a cabin anymore, or a gate, or an HOA. It was about standing your ground when everything pushes you to give in, about holding on to truth when others try to bury it under paperwork and fear. I didn't fight for revenge. I fought for peace. And as the wind rustled through the trees and the water lapped softly against the shore, I smiled. I was finally home. Loved this powerful story. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Bright Reality for more real-life dramas and bold truths. Stay tuned. Bright Reality brings you the stories they never thought you'd hear.